I'm Aryeh Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. The last stretch of the WNBA season is here, and each game couldn't be more important. It's time that we discuss. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content on winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. And remember, downloading this episode makes our stats look better and allows us to continue doing this important work. And one quick reminder before we get into the episode, if you want to sponsor an episode of the Winsidr Show, please shoot us an email, info@winsidr.com. Rachel, we're back. How you doing? You're back stateside. You've traveled, I don't know how many places you went to, but I've become very jealous of your Olympic break photos and
I really didn't
libations.
travel that much. I mean, I did get to go to Spain, which was a huge blessing for me. I had not been able to be in Europe for close to 2 years, which is crazy to think about. It being a place that I obviously spend a lot of time in. So it was great. I was able to go to Spain. I was able to watch some of the European Championships under 16s, and just got back less than a week ago, and really it was right on time just for the WNBA season to resume. So kind of like the rest of you guys, I mean, obviously it's a lot's happened in the last month or so since the Olympic break, and a ton to look forward to in terms of playoff time. But just happy to be back, happy to be able to talk some hoops. But I'm good. I'm really good.
Well, we got to talk. I mean, late last night, I forget what time zone you're in, Mountain Time, if that's a real thing. Um, but late night, we'll just start off. A lot has happened over the past, uh, week since games started again. Games started, I want to say, like on Saturday or something. Commissioner's Cup on Wednesday, or maybe the first game was on Sunday.
Sunday.
Whatever, it's a blur. It doesn't matter. It's WNBA season 2021.2 or point whatever. But NECA with a classic NECA putback to beat the Atlanta Dream as time was basically about to expire. Just like a classic NECA move. Glad to see her doing that type of stuff. Like, it wasn't the flashiest. It was a classic. NECA was in the right position and made the heady play. And
Yeah.
I wish that would have been her first game back, because that was the most like NECA Agumake play of all time. Like, it was flashbacks to that finals win.
Yeah.
So props to that. The LA Sparks on a 3-game win streak against, two other teams that are accompanying them in the bottom 4 of the league. So not going to be too hyped on that. Speaking of another bottom dwelling team, the Indiana Fever. Right, and people were all hyped going into the Olympic break. They're on like, what, a 3-game win streak. Rachel's texting me, check out my team, my hometown team. They're looking good. We're talking a little smack. And then like a week before we come back, there's an announcement that half the team is injured and or on personal leave and is not coming back. So that kind of took the excitement out of that.
Well, it was almost like the break. Like, obviously you're headed into break and you're on a 3-game win streak for the Fever was huge. But then it's like, you're feeling good during the break and you're able to enjoy your break as a franchise in some degree. But then, then a lot goes down and you kind of get brought back down to earth with the second part of the season and back to kind of the Sparks. I mean, I think obviously having NECA back is a huge shot in the arm. No one's going to argue that. It's refreshing. It's refreshing to see this team. Yeah, Tolliver too. Like at more of a normal capacity of what they should be. We've talked about the teams that have been hindered by injuries the most this season, and LA, in my opinion, has to be at the top of the list. Now, am I jumping for joy and like ready to like lose my mind over the fact that they beat the Dream and the Fever? No, but I do think it's a good little bit of confidence for this team, and like you have to be approaching it as like, hey, we're in the second portion of the season, and like now we've got more of our team here, like we could really make a run and do something. And like I'll be curious to see what this team can do with a little bit of confidence in the coming weeks.
Yeah, And, as crazy as it sounds, a couple players on this roster would have like doubling their playoff experience. So, as much as I might be a Satanist, pessimist, whatever you want to call it, like about this team, like, no, there's positives to get out of it. You're not winning a championship, fine.
Sure.
But you also have to be realistic of the fact that you built this roster, whatever pieces you're planning on keeping for the future, there's like two people on this roster who have in-depth playoff experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yeah, it's great Tolliver and Neka are back and they can help push this team hopefully to the playoffs. But I would say more important is less about how far in the playoffs they go. It's just getting, the Erica Wheelers. Amanda Zawi B has probably a little bit from New York. But just getting these players some real, actual playoff experience, that's going to be the important thing. And to what you were saying about the Fever, I'm the whole time you were talking about it, all I could think of is there's going to be some article that comes out during the off season that is going to be like the Fever were on a 3-game win streak and then injuries derailed their season or something like that.
That
And it's going to be
narrative,
like,
yeah,
right. But hey, props to the Fever for being able to at least have that narrative because earlier in the season it looked like they wouldn't even have
that's
that.
a good point. That's a good point. And hey, shout out to Christy Tolliver, who was named assistant the Dallas Mavericks. Incredible news. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we all know she deserves to be in the coaching industry. Yeah, my God, super big news.
Honestly, yeah. You know me, I'd prefer to see these amazing female coaches.
Yep.
Former WNBA players in the NBA anywhere. Personally, I'm biased and like a very selfish person, so I want them in the W because I don't think the NBA deserves them. But hey, they deserve to cash out. Let's talk about the Minnesota Lynx, my hometown team. Came out flat against the Sun twice after a nice late victory over the New York Liberty to stretch their 7-game win streak going into the break to 8 games coming out of the break. But then just, both games, and I was talking with Donnie Bar-Lavie, our Lynx beat reporter over at Winsidr, and we had very similar feelings, just that the negative aspects of their early season play was really starting to creep back into these last 2 games. The positive of it is they played really bad, but easily could have won both games if they played just a little bit better. If Damiris Dantas, we saw again, Damiris Dantas being a bystander when we've talked so much about her being the it factor that really gets the whole oiled machine rolling. And then the negative is that, we got stifled. And like I said, we're seeing the same issues as early in the season. But Rachel, your Connecticut Sun, I will say they're number 1 in the standings right now, thanks to 2 wins over the Lynx. But if I'm going to be fair, if I'm going to be honest, like I was not, like when you watch a really good defense, sometimes it gets hard to tell what part of it is the defense and what part of it is the other team not. Like there was aspects where I was like, wow, this defense is in the head of Minnesota. And that's why they're doing unforced errors. But then there was times where I'm just like, Minnesota's just throwing the ball away. Like it's not like, yeah, talk to me.
I mean, I am really high on the Sun and what they've been able to do defensively. I think that they are in the position that they are in right now solely on their discipline and the fact that this is such a well-coached team and they give themselves a chance night in and night out on how disciplined they are and how well they game plan and the chemistry that's amongst this team. The issue for me, I mean, look at the game the other night against Minnesota. You had DeWanna Bonner and Jonquil Jones combined for 51 of their 82 points. Like it's so top heavy in terms of the scoring at times. And that's the part that's, and I mean, I've said it before, this is the part of 1, the depth with this team. We know they're playing with fewer numbers. And then 2, in the long-term game in a playoff series, do they have enough, scoring offensively to be able, to hang with the other teams? But the fact that, I mean, they're putting up points. They scored 82, I mean, that's a respectable number. It's not like they're limping by in the early 70s and stuff, but they give themselves a chance because of what they do defensively. And, you made a point like, oh, Minnesota's just like throwing the ball around. I mean, they did only finish with 10 turnovers, but that's what a good defense will do. It may not rear its head as deflections or just flat out steals or just, lockdown plays. you have to understand, like, a team that's taking you out of certain actions that you want to run gets in your head, and it gets you uncomfortable, and it makes it so there's not a flow into the game, and it makes that team play in a way that they don't want to play. And for us as just fans or outsiders looking in, that's not always super apparent, because you'd have to know the inner workings of both teams, and exactly the type of action that Minnesota's trying to run, and it's a whole other thing. So I'll just kind of chill on that point. But I think that Connecticut deserves a ton of credit for, here we are, August 20th. They're tied with first place with a depleted roster, without one of the best players in the league and one of the cogs of this team, Alyssa Thomas. I mean, imagine if she was playing with where we would be. So it's a huge testament to Connecticut. I think in the long run, do they have enough to be able to sustain a playoff? I'll keep saying that. That's going to be the question that we're not going to know till we go through that playoff. But yeah, I mean, Connecticut defensively, they've given themselves a chance, and they do. They're so disruptive, and they're so frustrating. To Minnesota, I mean, this is a team that they're in position, like it's kind of like you don't know what team's going to show up in some ways, and maybe that's not a fair assessment when you're playing teams like Connecticut, because that's a hell of a test. Connecticut has done that to almost everyone that they've played against, right? Like they make you look like a different team. That's their entire strategy. But, Minnesota, it's kind of like, which team's going to show up? Is it the team that struggled earlier in the season? Is it the team that got it going? But they're still in that striking distance, to be clicking again. And, you're 3.5 games back. It's definitely a top 3 team at this point. But like I said, striking position in terms of playoff positioning, that's important.
Yeah, well, and I would add to that is, one thing is, you look at the Connecticut team, the history they have together, right? Yes, Rwanda
Absolutely.
Bonner's only been there for 2 years, but like, to have that experience versus this Lynx team where they're having such key players are new to this field, new to this team, I think is a huge thing. But there was something that was brought up, which I thought, whether or not we're going to say this is why Minnesota lost, I don't agree that this is why Minnesota lost. I think Minnesota lost because they didn't take advantage of the plentiful options of turnovers from Connecticut. But a great, interesting point was kind of exacerbated during the press conferences last night, ending the game, where Cheryl Reeve and
Free
then
throw
Nafisa
numbers.
Collier, yep, and some other people just wouldn't answer questions because they were so upset about this. I believe like Sil and Fee like didn't get to the line, or maybe they got to the line once in the game. I don't have the stats in front of me. What I do have in front of me is just a few players throughout the season, how many times they've gotten to the line. Just
They
to
got
run
they
it
got there
down,
5 times between the two of them, Collier and Fowles.
which is just ridiculous
Sure.
considering where Fowles is the whole game and
Well, and
how much Fee
yeah,
is
yeah. I
showing.
mean, you've got close to 20 shot attempts, which should be more, in my opinion. But
Oh, definitely.
you know,
Between the two of them, it needs to be more. But to be granted, well, what I saw was interesting was that like Fee was shying out because she wasn't getting the calls, so she was settling for worse percentage mid-range jumpers as
sure,
opposed to attacking the basket.
sure. Yeah,
Which, obviously you're playing against John Paul Jones, you're going to be afraid to do that. But just to run down some numbers, so far this season, Bonner has gotten to the line 105 times, John Paul Jones 79 times, Tina Charles 106, Griner 106, Asia 150, Stewie 113, Skylar 144, and basically everyone else 90 and above when you're talking about Tiffany Mitchell, Dearica Hamby, Elizabeth Camp Beige, Benaja Laney, Enrique, Ariel Atkins, Tierra McCowan, Tiffany Mitchell. That's actually crazy that McCowan's gotten there that many times considering her minutes. But then you look at Fee and Sil, and they are by far the worst on this whole
which is
list of
interesting.
76
Yeah,
and 73 times. That's just ridiculous to me. And I have noticed that Sil just hasn't been getting calls and has been playing amazing, which is like shocking to me that
mm-hmm.
she hasn't been getting more calls. But, not going to say that's why they lost, but it is an interesting aspect to bring up. Talking about another top team, the Seattle Storm.
Whew.
Noel Quinn, the head coach, decides, hey, we're going to sit Stewie and Bird for 2 games. I feel confident in this team. Stewie, we don't want too much. We got a load management. Stu's getting up there in age. They dropped both games, one in overtime, one towards the end of the game. It really ended. But I mean, look, you look at this game, you look at this team, and the fact that they're able to keep up with basically Jewel Lloyd orchestrating the
Yeah.
whole orchestra is a huge positive, and I think just builds for the rest of the season. I mean, I think they've made it clear they're the top dogs in this league, even if they're not sitting number one in the standings.
For sure. I mean, first off, Jewel Lloyd's playing incredible. This is not the depth we are used to seeing on the Seattle Storm. Obviously, Sammy Whitcomb, Natasha Howard. So it is different. So when you're taking Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart off the roster and they're not competing, obviously this team is vastly different. And but like you said, to still be in these games the way you've been, and Jewel Lloyd taking on the load that she's been able to take is incredible. Have we heard, like tonight, Seattle's playing New York. Have we heard? I don't think I've seen anything about whether they're going to sit or not. I would imagine they would. Have you heard?
I have not seen anything yet, but if we see anything, I'll edit it in.
And I think that like it's completely valid. I think it's smart. I think that rest for those two Olympians.
It sounds like they will play just based off of the initial injury report. They are not listed on it, and in the past, they have been listed for rest.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, taking a couple hits and you're still in that top position to rest your two best players, like, yeah, it's smart. This is, I don't think you can criticize that decision at all. So.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, it's a pretty easy, if you can, like, again, you look at these teams, where Seattle's going to be. Exactly. They're going to be a top 3 team. There's no reason to risk injury. You can rest for a few games. Not a big deal. And then you look at the Las Vegas Aces. I mean, just my 2 cents, they beat the Mystics twice, but honestly, Mystics, like, the story's bigger about the Mystics, right? Like, the Aces, we know who they are. We know what their questions are, whether or not they're going to be able to sustain consistent success with Liz Cambage and Asia Wilson. Are we going to see the, which version of that pairing are we going to see? Yep. And can this team pull off a victory against, the Sun and or the Seattle Storm? That's the question. Yep. But for me, the Mystics are the bigger thing, right? Like, they just, and I watch a lot of their games. My wife's a season ticket holder, is a big Mystics fan. They are 2 completely different teams in the first half and second half of a game. They play so well in the first half, and you're like, wow, Tina Charles, MVP. And then you watch the second half, and I'm just like, miss me with that, right? They're ranked 10th their 10th seed right now. Tina's not an MVP. She's playing really good on a bad team. Like, that's just where I'm at with this season.
Yeah. I mean, what Tina Charles is doing is incredible, but Tina has to do what she's doing to even give some opportunity of success for this team. And it's a depleted roster. They're not at full strength. Like, they might be able to inch through a couple wins, if they continue at this. But like, for me, an MVP, again, from a numbers perspective, yes, she deserves to be in that conversation. But this team is sitting at 10th place in the league. Like, they're going to have to make some serious jumps up these standings and quite a run in the playoffs in order to be considered, in my opinion. Like an MVP is more than just numbers that are being put up for me.
Well, also, if you're going to be on the 10th ranked team, you're not even averaging a double-double. Like, sorry, missed me with that MVP talk. That's just not happening in my book. I'm done with it. Moving on. Like, I'm just so sick of it. Okay, so she's putting up a ton of points. Why wasn't Aryeh the MVP the other year? Like, come on.
Fair.
Chicago, your hometown team, one of your hometown teams. I tweeted this out. I feel like you agree with me on this. The Sky have the players and personnel to win it all. Defense hasn't been there. Consistency and just multiple game. Even in that 7-game win streak, I wasn't like, this is a championship team. I just haven't seen multiple full games where I'm very impressed by them. And for me, it's just basically, if I'm a Sky fan, I'm hoping that they hit a hot streak right before the playoffs, and just whatever seed they're at, they run it through and they go as far as they can. I think that you're no longer like, the typical, let's try and get a top 4 seed or a top 3 seed. You're at the point where, you might be able to get a top 4 seed, maybe even a top 3, but mostly your focus is on making that deep run.
Well, and I just, defensively, like against Dallas the other night, it's just like, you need a few more stops. You've got to be able to rely on your defense to pull you through. And, at this point where we're at right now, the Connecticut Sun, the Las Vegas Aces, the Seattle Storm have separated themselves as the very clear top 3 players in this league right now. And then there's kind of like this secondary tier of like what ifs, right? But there's so many question marks. And for me with Chicago, like I echo everything you say. Like, yeah, we all know they have the talent, but have they shown at any point this season that they're a true contender? To me, no, they have not. I think we're all just waiting to see, like, can they hit that hot streak? Can they get that momentum? Can they get those gritty stops at the end of the game that are required to win some of these close games? It's just kind of been I feel like the Chicago Sky season has been a disappointment so far because, again, you have these expectations and you have this hope that this team can be what we all believed they might be able to be, but then they just kind of fall short at times. So again, that doesn't mean they can't get on a streak. It's just like Minnesota, like they're still in okay position. They're 500, which is a perfect analogy to kind of what their season has been. Half good, half bad. You don't really know what team you're going to get. So yeah, I'm with you on it.
Before we do our last segment, I just want to remind you, if you want to sponsor an episode of the Winsidr show or sponsor something else, a different aspect of the Winsidr network.
Sponsor Aryeh.
Yeah, sponsor me, sponsor Rachel, whatever it is. Email us, info@winsidr.com. Well, if you're trying to sponsor me, just email Aryeh@winsidr.com. But Winsidr is your one-stop shop for all your WNBA news and conversation. We can't do without your help. Become a subscriber at patreon.com/Winsidr. For just a few dollars a month, you can help grow the game. Rachel, it's going to be quite simple, right? It's Friday today. I thought it was Thursday for a second. Yep. We got a palette of 6 games.
Let's go.
From publish until the start of next week.
Yep.
So no game on Monday, all right? We got Storm Liberty. Let's just run it down, pick them real quick. Storm Liberty, from my understanding, it does seem like the bigs are playing, but who knows?
I don't know. Liberty, we didn't really get a chance to talk about them much. They're still that team that's like, I'm interested to watch them. Like, they excite me, especially when you throw Natasha Howard back in there. So it's kind of like, this could be a toss-up. I mean, for many reasons. We don't know who else playing, but I'm going to I don't know, maybe I'll get crazy here and just go with New York.
All right. Well, I mean, I'll make it
That's a bold. That's a
really bold take, because I would say New York if Stewie and Bird don't play, but if Stewie and Bird play, I think it's pretty clear who I'm going with. Wings, Fever. Wings actually have a roster. I'm going Wings.
I'm going Wings.
Dream Mercury on Saturday, a lunchtime matinee, 12 p.m. Eastern. Ooh. Mercury versus the Dream. I'm going Mercury.
BG's playing extremely well right now.
Somebody lit a fire under her during those Olympics, and exactly. People love to think that Rachel and I hate BG because we always are critical of her.
I want the dominant BG all the time,
Exactly. Like, she's honestly, she is, like, if she continues to play this well for the rest of the season, she's creeping into that MVP talk. She'll be the number 3 player in my mind in the MVP talk.
Sure.
Lynx Sky.
This is an interesting one.
I have an easy pick for this.
I'm going Sky.
I'm good because I'm going Lynx. We'll go hometown. I find it very hard to bet against the Lynx after a loss. I didn't, but granted, they did just lose 2 in a row. Moving on to Sunday, we got Sparks versus Liberty. Who are you going with?
Because now it's like, okay, LA's like really going to be tested, right? Like, they're not playing Atlanta and Fever. Not to say that those wins are not valid. They're valid. They're wins.
They count on the score sheet, but we know what you're saying.
I mean, I'm going to mix it up. I'm saying Sparks.
Cool, because I'm going Liberty.
Oh my God, this is going to really separate our predictions this year.
There we go. And then Storm versus Mystics.
Storm.
On Sunday, the day before the Seattle Storm.
But wait a minute, is this the one that they changed the time because people were thinking, ooh, maybe Elena could be back? Is this the one?
Possibly. Yes, I believe they changed it. Now it's on ESPN. So the assumption is... I'll be honest, I don't even care if Elena's back.
Well, yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like,
because at this point you have to imagine that Seattle's going to be at full strength, and even if Elena is back, which please, God Almighty, let her come back. We all miss her. Oh my God, to see her back on the court would be such a treat. But yeah, I mean, regardless, she still has to get back into it. So
Yeah,
Seattle.
Seattle. All right, let me just write. I'll write these down after. But Rachel, thank you as always. Honestly, shocked. That felt like we went longer. If anybody has any questions, thoughts, concerns,
Yeah.
things they want us to talk about on the podcast, shoot us a DM, shoot us a reply, whatever it
And
is. We want to talk about it.
obviously, yeah, and obviously, we're all still getting very much back into it following the break. So I think after this weekend, we'll have even more to discuss, probably Sunday night or Monday. So be on the lookout for that as well.
Yeah, and be on the lookout for some stuff Rachel and I have been cooking regarding the film room,
Oh,
but won't even talk about
oh.
that later.